welcome back to another episode of Back to Watercolors. Today I'm excited to introduce to you a new way I'm thinking about color harmony and mixing as I combine my watercolor and gouache. Whether you like the transparency of watercolor or the opacity of gouache, understanding how the watercolors relate can give you more control and more cohesion in your work, and that's what I'm looking for, so let's dive in. But first, let's talk about why color harmony. Why am I even bothering about this now? As some of you may know if you're not new to my channel, but if you are new, I'll let you know that I never went to art school. Everything I've learned has mostly just come from watching YouTube videos or tips and tricks from watching or reading things online. Color harmony means that your painting feels like everything belongs together, keeps everything from looking very messy and loose. Your painting starts feeling intentional. In color harmony, it's better to have a relationship between hue, value, intensity, and temperature. That's how you know everything is working together. Because I mix my watercolor and gouache together, I have to pay attention to those components, and they behave differently depending on which medium I'm using or which one is more dominant in my color mixing. Instead of just picking colors and mixing them together like I used to, I want to be intentional with my color palette and pick out colors that I think I might want to use. It's not perfect, but I did enjoy how the scarf turned out in the end because I was able to mix my colors ahead of time and work with a cohesive color palette. In the end, I didn't use everything that was in my color palette. I also added new colors that weren't originally in my color palette. But working with a limited palette, even when you originally think you're not going to be working with the original palette, definitely helps with the color harmony and the harmony of the piece. To give an example, in this painting, I picked my dominant color, which was the teal green color, and I mixed it or supported that color with a warm yellow ochre. The accent in between was a pinkish red that granulated, and then I added splashes of blue to bring the whole family of colors together. I hope to practice this more in future paintings, especially with landscape paintings. The step is to pick 3 families of color. A dominant is support in like an accent color. Usually I gravitate towards blue greens and then yellow, and then I want to start using more red or like a pinkish corally red in my paintings as an accent color, but some of the time it's blue again. So if I go more green, I usually add a blue as a accent color in a way, but I'm trying to get more comfortable using my reds and my pinks again. Instead of just jumping into the painting, I want to use a scrap sheet of paper as my mixing and to help mix these 3 colors together in different proportions to see if they work well together, and also practice my values and my saturation. Hey everyone, I hope the audio isn't too bad. I don't have the mic set up. I just thought I would pop in and give you a little update. So I had to cut the camera. Because today is such a rainy day, so there's no sunlight, and I'm battling between light and this weird shadow thing that happens because of the overhead light. And it doesn't make a very aesthetic video. So I was a little bit kind of feeling upset. If you hear any clinking, I have a glass of water. Let me put that down. So, what's going on? What's going on is that I almost had a panic attack because I like how the painting is going so far. And I had to cut the cameras because I was struggling with harmonizing my greens that you saw me mix earlier with the, I believe this is buff titanium, and then I have yellow ochre here, and I use these 2 to mix with my greens to get a gradient and a harmonizing green color. but I was struggling. I was struggling for a little bit because I didn't like how it was turning out. But now, and I always forget this, every time I paint with gouache or watercolors, I always forget this. You have to let the colors settle on the paper a little bit and like dry down before you get the true color and you know what's going on, and then you can adjust from there. So while I was letting the colors settle and dry down, I started doing like the outline and some highlights and stuff like that. I know this is not a very common way to paint, and while I'm talking, I'm going to do a little bit more outlining. So I know this is not a common way to paint, and I'm saying this because from the art YouTubers that I watch that do painting videos and stuff, they try to get an overall like an overall flats down for their painting before they go into detail. But for me, I have to I get the flats down, of course, but then as I'm getting the flat down, I'm waiting for paint to dry, which watching paint dry is the absolute worst sometimes. Especially when you want to just kind of go and not rush the painting, but finish a painting or paint within a time constraint, because I'm always working with a time constraint, unfortunately. So what I was saying, sorry, I'm getting a little distracted. What I was saying was that while I was watching the paint dry, I decided to work on the outlining details of the painting. And that meant just, after I laid down the flats, I work on the line work and like a little bit of the detail work and let that dry while I'm working on other line work and detail. And I jump around a little bit. So you originally saw me working on this flowing part of the painting, which I am in love with. The problem with having everything in my head is that I am totally jumping around this entire conversation. So I originally pulled on the camera because I was struggling with the scarf. I wasn't happy with it, but I always forget that I need to let the colors dry down so I can get an accurate understanding of what's happening. And within my panic, I was like, okay, I'm just going to start outlining and defining some detail work. And that's what I do with every painting. I know it's not a common thing. Most artists like to lay down an overall flat wash and then go into the details slowly. But with my strategy with painting and what works for me, because it helps a little bit with the panic of everything looking like a washed out blob, is to first do the face. It takes me the longest. It's the focal point of the entire painting. So I do the face, I go with the flats, I go with the details, and then I do another wash of flat color if I'm not liking how everything is turning out. And I'm really loving how the face turned out. I'm very proud of how it turned out. And I got the dark saturation that I was looking for, and then also like the color that I was looking for. So very, very happy, chef's kiss. After I finished the details with that, I started working on the scarf, and I'm finishing up the details of the scarf, but the likelihood of me coming back to this is very high just because it needs time to like dry down. I need to work in other elements like the hair and the garment. So the scarf I will be coming back to, and then I'll be working on the smaller details like the rabbits and the butterflies, and then I will be done.
garden room. Wings are beating, baby, me and you alone. Pencil drawing phases of the moon. All through the stages, both becoming seen into. Slowly we take on phosphorescence, vivid in the bond. Phosphorescence. In the heavens, a billion signals move, call and answer, thousand pairs of two by two. Slowly we take on phosphorescence.